Yeah, I thought it was such a thunderclap of a symbolic moment, so clearly arranged, so clearly intimidatory in a sense too, that it also had an effect of immediately advertising that Sussan Ley is a lame duck. I mean, there's no power in her. That's going to hurt, I think.
Well, what about the moderates? They couldn't get their act together. Or they don't even seem to have confidence in Sussan Ley to stand behind her. And I think, I don't know. I mean, you obviously ideologically wouldn't agree with this, but would Sussan Ley have been better off backing net zero and just going down? You know what I mean? At least be seen to stand for something and at least stand for your supporters, because there were 20 of them in there, the moderates, who back a net zero target. Perhaps they'd move off 2050, but they back action on climate change. They are 20 of her 29 votes, right? So she's kind of disowning, or expected to disown, at Shadow Ministry tomorrow, 20 of her votes. Where are you then? You're in no woman's land. And again, it just looks like you'll do whatever it takes to stay in the job, and what do you actually believe in? So sometimes, even if you go down, I reckon you're better off just sticking to principle and to what your supporters want. And the evidence is she's not going to do that. She's just trying to save her leadership. And she would say, well, I've got to save the coalition. I've got to keep the Liberal Party together. But does it make her look strong? Does it make her look like a leader? Will she be up there advocating for something her supporters don't want? How does that work long term?
Look, all those are excellent questions, but I really think that sign of solidarity from the ones that want net zero gone suggests you cannot lead a united party unless you go with them. But beyond that, you cannot be the leader of a party that says no to net zero unless you are passionately invested in that cause. You have the facts at your fingertips, you argue with conviction, and when you have dithered for this long and you're seen to be dragged to that position yourself, you are not that leader.
Well, I was reporting straight after the election when there was that initial coalition split for like 2 days. I said the coalition could split over net zero because the Nationals are going to dump net zero. Now, if I knew that, as a humble political journalist, Andrew, I'm pretty sure Sussan Ley would have known that. So if we're talking about a failure of leadership by Sussan Ley, it's then. It's right then, right? She could have seized the moment. She could have got Little Proud in a room. She could have got her opponents in the room. She could have got the moderates in a room, separate rooms initially and then together, and behind the scenes fashioned a policy. That's what a leader would do. And say, look, you know, say to the moderates, say if she got them all on board. Instead today, they're going to be speaking against her effectively. If she could convince them, look, we can still tackle emissions reduction, but power prices has to be the main game. I need you to support me. Then we would have had a pretty unified front today. We didn't. We had a complete dog's breakfast. The division, column inches will be written, many, tomorrow, of the division in that party. And the TV pictures tonight, all it will tell people is these guys, if you can't govern yourself, you can't govern the country. So I think if there's a failure of leadership, it's at that initial point. Sussan Ley, instead of saying we're going to have a 6-month to 1 year review on this issue, which just opened the door for division and opened the door for the Nationals to front run, she should have spent every waking moment at that time at the beginning of her leadership trying to sort this out and trying to get everyone on the same page. Instead, she's just opened up the floor.
I don't know if
everyone gets
possible.
a say.
I don't know
who's in charge.
Yeah, but that's not possible to get everyone on the same page. But I would say that the pictures today suggest that the only way the Liberals can pretend to be united and disciplined and passionate about fighting on either side of the argument is if they go for against net zero. If they're against net zero, because only that side showed some sort of unity. And anything other than going net zero will show the world, listen, most of those libs, they're not for the policy they claim to be for. And I just think it's over. It was over before. It always should have been against net zero. But Andrew, if they do decide to go net zero in any form, maybe yes to some seemingly sensible move to cut emissions, not that I can think of what that might be, maybe nuclear power at least. Do you think that would give Labor any trouble?
Yes, it will cause Labor trouble, but only if they can prosecute the argument. And they haven't shown a capacity so far to prosecute the argument. And I think Mickey Cash argued this in the party room today. We've got to make it like The Voice. That was the last time they had some success, really binary. And they're saying, well, we support the Paris Agreement. So how do you explain that? That's going to be their position. Oppose net zero, this is what I'm tipping, and support the Paris Agreement when it lands tomorrow after Shadow Ministry. So is that a bit a confused message and hard to sell? I suspect so. You can still sell it. You've just got to prosecute it really hard and just say, look, we're about emissions reduction, but we're about lower power bills. And lower power bills take precedence. And just hammer away at that. And just hammer away at the fact, look, when China, we're moving the same as the OECD countries. You know, that's what we should be doing. But if you keep it simple to those messages, then you've got a chance. But so far, they just haven't been able to show themselves as able to prosecute. And look, I've got to say of the three main contenders, Ley, Taylor and Hastie, you know, Ley and Taylor have some skin in the game in the sense that Taylor was the minister when they signed up to net zero. So if he was leader, how do you reckon that would go in the parliament or indeed in an election campaign?
No.
Hastie, he's had some blunders recently, so he's put himself on the back foot. But he is someone who could genuinely say, this is what I believe, this is my conviction. And perhaps down the track, Andrew, that gives him a little advantage over the other two when it comes to this debate and leading.
Well, maybe, but it'd have to be nimbler on his feet in argument than has shown so far. But it's interesting you draw the parallel with The Voice. Of course, leading that and making it very binary was Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price, with passion and conviction. That kind of figure, I'm not saying her necessarily, but that kind of figure is the only person that can help the Liberals now. Andrew Clennell, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, mate.